Welcome to the Tackling College Sports Podcast, the definitive resource to help you navigate your way to play college-level sports. Here are your hosts, Chris Legates and Mark Franco, where they want you, the TCS Nation, to be your best.
Welcome, TCS Nation, and thanks for tuning in to the Tackling College Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Franco, and alongside me is my non-pumpkin spice latte drinking co-host, Chris Legates. Morning, Chris.
Hey, good morning.
Yeah, today we have Jon Sioredas, head wrestling coach at Cal Poly, on the line with us. Good morning, Jon.
Good morning. How are you guys?
Great. Welcome and thanks for being on the podcast. Before we start, let's see which side of the pumpkin spice debate he falls on. Yes or no for pumpkin spice, Jon?
Oh, that's a big no over here.
Oh, that's great. Hey, Jon, great weekend for you at the Tournament of Champions in Reno, Nevada. You came placed fourth, one of the best finishes in a long time. Want to tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, we're wrestling well right now. We've been pretty consistent with our training and just been getting better and better. And it was a good showing. There were some other things going on behind the scenes, but the fact that we got a team trophy, they placed top four. I believe it was the first time in 11 or 12 years. So it's a big deal for our school, and I'm just happy for our guys.
That's awesome. Some of the best schools in the country, they're participating. Yes.
Yes and no. Some of the bigger teams, Oklahoma State's just so incredibly deep. They actually didn't even bring their starters and won the tournament. Their starters are ranked number one in the country. Penn State was supposed to make it out. I believe they ran into some weather. So, but still a lot of good competition. A lot of big schools, and it's always fun when you have some of those larger tournaments to really see where you stand.
And when you go into the break like you do right now, how's morale with the team?
Oh, it's been great. It's been great. Being a combat sport, when you get defeated, I mean, some of these guys take it pretty personally, and it can affect them for a long time. So getting a little momentum before the break, I think, is huge. Then we come back and we got a ton of dual meets, January, February. Then it's tournament time.
Jon, before I start with the questions, how did you think you were going to fare going into that? Just curious.
We won a lot of close matches. That's been pretty much the theme for our team this year. We came out of the gate blazing. We had a hard off-season training, and then we wrestled Indiana University. They were ranked 27th at the time, and we won a lot of the close matches and ended up winning the duel, which was huge. And then we haven't had any bad losses, but we wrestled some teams that we lost to, and they won some of the close ones. So, for us, if we can stay consistent and figure out how to win the close matches, I think we could fare pretty well this year.
That's good news. All right. So, Jon, can you take us back to your days of wrestling at Great Bridge High, where you were an All-American, and take us down the path on how you ultimately wound up coaching at Cal Poly?
So I was very fortunate to have parents that were very supportive and really allowed me to chase a dream. So, in high school, I wrestled for a school my first couple of years that, the school wasn't very good. So my parents actually picked up and, moved me an hour down the road to go to one of the top high schools in the country. And I think it happens in every sport, but it was one of the best moves we made because it put me, in front of not only just a great coaching staff, but great teammates that had a big vision and wanted to win at the highest level. And, that's just what we did. We wrestled year round. We were one sport athletes, and it paid off. Ended up, getting a scholarship to University of Missouri, wrestled there under a great head coach, Brian Smith, and he had just taken over a couple years before. So when I came in, it was part of the rebuilding era of Missouri wrestling. Now they're top 5, top 10 every year. So I got to be part of that as a student athlete. In my last 2 years of undergrad, transferred to University of Tennessee at Chattanooga and got to wrestle for Terry Brands, who's an icon in our sport. He's the associate head coach at Iowa now. And, that was his first head coaching job and transferred over mostly because I couldn't make the team at Missouri. There was an All-American in front of me and had the opportunity to compete for Coach Brands. And, that was exactly what I needed at the time, just to get some wind in my sails, kind of hit the refresh button. I mean, I was a backup for 3 years, and that's tough to take when you're one of the top high school wrestlers. So my last 2 years were awesome, and ended up winning some matches and losing some as well too, but ended up placing pretty high. And then, essentially went right into coaching afterwards, moved home. My high school coach at the time took the job at Old Dominion University. So I came on staff there and coached for 6 or 7 years, got to learn the business, learn how to recruit, learn how to coach, and then went back to my alma mater at Chattanooga and had a couple years there, 2 more years, and then got my first head coaching job at Grand Canyon University, which was a Division II school transitioning to Division I. They brought us in to help with the transition. They ended up dropping the program out of the blue 8 months ago. And it's just funny how when one door shuts, another door opens. And Cal Poly, which has, always been a dream job in my mind, mostly because of the tradition, the academic standards, and the location is one of the best. So it worked out. We got this job, and we've been trucking along for the past 8 months, and I think we're going to do well here.
That's great. You mentioned during your high school days, you were one sport year round. For those times in that area, was that unusual?
I think it was typical for our program because we were competing for national titles.
Okay.
We were the number 1 public school in the country a couple times.
Wow.
We were running away with the state tournament every year. We were signing up to 6 or 7 D1 letter of intents per year just from our team. I think there was a point there where our high school coach was getting more college All-Americans than a lot of the colleges were. So it was the nature of the beast for us. We had very few guys that played multiple sports. Looking back, I wish I would have. I think my opinion has changed drastically on that. Because I did experience a little bit of burnout my first couple of years. But, yeah, that was the nature of the beast. It was essentially a D1 college program that was just taking place in high school.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned about honing in on one sport, because that often comes up with coaches that we're interviewing here. And as you say, you wish you sort of, maybe went through different sports. That's, I think, the theme, right, Chris? We've had several of them think that way.
Yeah, we've had other coaches on, John, who have said to us that by and large now the pendulum is swinging towards we want to see athletes who are multiple sport athletes.
Absolutely. And we, especially football players, because they're team guys. Wrestling, we're selfish in wrestling. Typically you're worrying about yourself. You're cutting the weight. It's a very grueling sport, and we train 20 hours a week to wrestle a 7-minute match. So to have some of the guys that have a background in other sports, especially team sports, is awesome, because now they're team players, and we try as hard as we can to be team coaches and get everyone in together and rise as a team. So, plus, you don't have to work out 12 months a year at wrestling to be the best guy. You certainly don't have to do it from age 8 years old like I did. I think there's a lot of guys winning national titles that played multiple sports in high school, and they got to enjoy their childhood, which is extremely important. And they have that itch. Right. By the time we get them, they have that competitive edge, and they still have a lot of room to grow. They haven't hit their ceiling, so to speak.
Right. John, you mentioned that Cal Poly was pretty much your dream job. As a first-year coach of the wrestling program with obviously a rich tradition, what was your game plan coming in?
So our game plan was simple. We want to graduate our student athletes with a meaningful degree. We want to have a reputation of excellence on campus and in the community. And we want to produce NCAA All-Americans and national champions. It's been done here before. That was the biggest selling point to me. They've been down for a few years from a competitive standpoint. But we got great guys on this team. We have guys that have a lot of potential. We have a young team. And I think we're going to do well here. But, yeah, it's the academic standards here are through the ceiling. If just trying to get admitted through the general student body, last year they turned down 7,000 kids with a perfect 4.0 GPA that were trying to get admitted. Wow. They told them no. So you can imagine. Wow. Now we have slots and we can get prospects in, but we got to make sure we get the right type of kid. And because you're going to be sitting in class with all valedictorians. So the student athlete here is more mature. You don't have to do class checks, because if they don't go to class, they're not going to pass. So we're dealing with a more mature kid, and they're smart. They're very, very smart. So it's fun. They're mature. They're just a lot of fun to deal with. And this has been different from, the other 3 schools that I've been to, just from that point alone.
Wow. That is incredible. Jeez.
Yeah, it is.
Kudos to them. Nice to be able to pick and choose like that. They're doing something right. John, you've had obviously a lot of successes in your career, but can you tell us what have been the toughest challenges so far?
So from a coaching standpoint, I think that the biggest thing for me and how I'm different now from when I started coaching 12 years ago is understanding that this job, it's not about us. It's about the student athletes. It's about the student athlete welfare. We're their support system. And it's all about, their experiences, because our number one mission here and moving forward on top of even academics and obviously wrestling is preparing outstanding men for life after wrestling. And that's what I feel we're responsible for. Once I started to realize that a few years ago, things started to change. They started to change in how we talk to our guys. We do more listening. We want to make sure that we can relate with them, and try to give them the best possibility to do well. And it's not a national title in everyone's cards, and we have to be okay with that. Our goal is to help our guys reach their potential. And typically when you're doing well academically, doing well socially, you tend to do pretty well on the mat and overachieve. And if our guys are overachieving, then we're very, very happy. So that was a challenge early on. I think what happened when you're young and you're just getting into this game is you just want to win and win at all cost. And, you take risk. You take risk on recruits, guys that can wrestle very well, but maybe are not strong academically or socially. And just because you want to win, and then when you don't, and, you start turning your back on them, in a sense, you're gauging these guys as pieces of meat. And, when they don't perform for you, you get on them and you move to the next guy, or you recruit over their head where, we have to look at the longevity. We got 5 years with these guys. So if we pick and choose and we sign kids that we really, really love and they come in and they're not winning out of the gate, like, that's fine. It may take 2 years. It may take 3 years. Heck, for me personally, it took me 4 years until I broke through, and then we'll get a year or two out of them, and then it's rinse and repeat. And we have to be okay with that. I want our guys leaving here with a good taste in their mouth and being willing to give back and just be part of this community moving forward. And continuing to grow in the tradition that they've done a great job over the past 50, 60, 70 years here in wrestling.
Sounds like you got a good start.
Yes, we do. When the guys, I gauge it when we talk to our team, especially in difficult moments, and when they look back at you and they look in your eyes, there's something to be said about that. That means they're listening. That means they believe in what you have to say. And that single point alone has been awesome, and I'm grateful for it. And I think we're doing well because of that single point.
Right. Chris.
Jon, how has your recruiting changed now, let's say in those 12 years? But in addition to that, you talk about wanting to get to know the student athlete, and now the recruiting process starts a lot younger than it used to. But what kind of things, and go into detail if you can, are you doing in your recruiting process to, like you said, to get to know the student athlete better, to maximize their potential?
I know every coaching staff is different. For us, we don't mass recruit by any means. It is a little bit of a numbers game, and you do have to start with a large list, especially with our academic standards. But the things we look for, really two things: high character and high work ethic. Obviously, you got to be competent in wrestling. We want the guys to have some quality wins, especially with our scholarship dollars. They're all partials, so we're trying to, sign certain level of guys at certain weights. But the other thing that probably the single most important thing outside of that for us is just having that burning desire to compete. And it goes back talking about being a multi-sport athlete and being sport specific at a young age. Typically, by the time we get them at this level, they wrestle for one or two reasons. Either A, because they got some scholarship dollars, or B, because they've just always wrestled and it's what they do. And you can see in their eyes that they're just there. They're, they like training. They love the camaraderie. They love their teammates. They love their coaches. But, the select few that have that burning desire to compete, those are the ones that are self-motivated. Those are the ones that are doing, a lot of the extra workouts. Those are the ones that when you say something, they follow through at all costs. And that's how we're going to attempt to build our program. We signed too early. Both kids are great students. They're both ranked nationally. They're both top 20 kids in the country. But more importantly, they love wrestling. And I think that's just so incredibly important. For how many hours we put in. I mean, we're training, 20 hours a week in individual drills and watching video and running and the weight cut alone can take, a kid out of this sport pretty quick. So having that burning desire to compete, and it's hard to find, and we don't get it right every time. Every mom and dad and high school coach in the country is, acting as their agent. So, they're telling us everything we want to hear. So little Johnny can get a scholarship and compete at the next level. But we have to, the only way to find out is just spend a tremendous amount of time. So we'll narrow our list down to about, maybe a dozen kids, and then we will get them on campus and we will spend 48 hours with them. And, this recruiting process is a two-way street. It's not us selling our school and selling our program. We'll tell them what we have to offer. We'll tell them how we're different, but also it's an interview process. And I think the prospects need to understand that. I mean, we're not just going to ask them some questions during the home visit and the official visit, but, we're calling opposing coaches. Guidance counselor is a big one. They typically tell you the truth, really trying to do a deep dive, because if it's not the money we're investing, it's the next 5 years, of our lives and our time. And all in all, we better darn like the kid too. I think that's important. A coach told me that a few years ago. He goes, you know what, you better like them. And I was thinking back, I'm like, man, we signed some kids that were really good wrestlers, but I didn't really like them that much. And then when we got them in, I didn't work with them a lot. So, really having that relationship start strong in high school. And then when we get them, taking it to the next level and building that bond between the coaching staff and the kid, I think, sky's the limit, or at least, us helping them reach their potential and exceed their potential.
And I like what you're saying at that. And we talk about training habits and things you're looking for in student athletes. A sport like wrestling requires the athlete to spend plenty of time, like you said, 20 hours a week, because that's what the NCAA allows us, working on their skills, conditioning, strength and conditioning, getting weight, getting down to weight, scouting their opponents and things of that nature. It has to be a passion instead of an activity, Jon. Do you find that at this, after 12 years of coaching, are student athletes doing the little things that help them win matches?
I believe so. I really do. Almost to the point where now I think there's almost too much focus on the little things. Are we doing the right CrossFit workout? Are we peaking at the right time? I think it's almost too much going into it, and not enough time spent on the most important thing, which in my opinion is mental toughness or emotional toughness. Again, going back to us being a combat sport, some of these guys, by the time we get them, they've had great high school careers where they've won over 100 matches and lost less than 10. So they haven't dealt with failure. So they come in here and we got best guy on our team, one of the best guys on our team. I mean, he's lost several matches, he's lost 4 or 5 out of his first 7 or 8 matches, and, they're ripping their hair out and they don't know how to deal with it. So, for us to sit down and everyone talks a big game about the mental aspect. Oh, it's 80% mental, it's 90% mental. Well, then why the heck do we spend 99.9% of our time on the physical? If we got a guy who's doing pretty well, then all of a sudden he loses 4, 5, 6 matches in a row. It's not because his front headlock's not as good or his, single leg takedown's not as good. Something is going on. So being able to sit these guys down and get to the deeper issue, we do spend a lot of time meeting with our guys one-on-one. We got 34 on our roster. We coach all 34 guys, and the least we can do is bring them in for 30 minutes apiece, minimum once a quarter. We try to get 4 to 5 in a year, and every time we bring them in, it burns an entire week of productivity. I mean, we can't recruit, we can't, it's just we sit down and spend time with our guys. And there's been times where kids come in and give them a high five and say, hey, keep it going. There's other times where these student athletes will come in and just break down and start crying because something deeper is going on, whether it's something at home or something socially or academically. And we try to get to the root of the problem, and figure out a solution together. So yeah, the little things, we could write the best training regimen, and I think ours is pretty darn good. But I think in order to get over the hump, we got to be believers. We got to have guys that believe in each other, believe in themselves, understand how to look at, take failure and learn from it and grow from it. I think is by far the most important thing. And it really was, the last couple of years that I really started honing in on this, and I think it's working. And we're going to double down and make sure that our guys know that we believe in them. And if they do mess up, which they will at some point, not pulling the cord, not cutting them off and saying, hey, you need to transfer, I'm cutting your scholarship dollars. We say, hey, why did you mess up? What is going on here? Let's figure this thing out together and get through it and continue to make gains. And we started, the coolest statistic that we have for us is I came in 8 months ago, and as you know, when new coaching staff comes in, there's always some turnover. Well, we started with 34 guys on day one. We still have 34 8 months later. So that, having the retention rate at 100% is super important to me and my staff. And I think the guys can feel it too, because we care about each and every one of them.
That's awesome.
Hey, Jon, I'm just going to hop in real quickly here before Chris continues. 3 things I'm just wondering if your program looks at or utilizes. Number one is how you handle social media with the student athletes. Number two, do you use sports psychologists at all? And then thirdly, strength and conditioning.
Absolutely. So social media, we talk to our guys, and we follow them on Twitter and Facebook. And, I think them just being aware, and our department does a good job at the beginning of each year of laying out the expectations. And when things go on in other programs, we had a wrestler a few years ago at a Division I school that became ineligible because of one comment that he made on Twitter. And we bring this to the attention. We had Columbia University, they were suspended for their first match because of some things that the kids were socializing on a closed group chat, and it got out to the public, and they suspended the team. So we have these conversations, and we try to learn from them, and we want our guys to be respectful, and we want them to appreciate each other and appreciate others. And that really is our core value among everything else. Just appreciate people, understand what you do affects others around you. So just by talking about it on a consistent basis, I feel like we have a good grip on it right now. And if and when it becomes an issue, then I think we sit down with the individual or the group of guys and just to reiterate and make sure they understand the expectations. But I think we've been pretty clear on that. As far as a sports psychologist, I do think that's the next big leap in college athletics, the next trend, which it seems to be. A lot of the bigger schools have multiple sports psychologists on staff. We do have one, and he's great. It's for us right now, it's an as-needed basis. So, if we have some guys that are going through some stuff, or we have one kid that's utilizing right now, he just cannot figure out how to win matches. He trains at a high level. He does well academically, he does well socially. He just loses close matches, and I don't know if it's pressure, fear of failure, or what it is, but now he's sitting down with our sports psychologist to really get a grip and figure out what they can do on the mental side to help him. I would love it to get to the point where we as a team and could do sessions. I think it's so incredibly important. And then lastly, strength and conditioning. Strength wins in wrestling, as you can imagine. So we try to get our guys big and strong. We have the head strength coach at our school. He is awesome. We walk in and my assistant, one of my assistants, is pretty hands-on with a lot of the training. But we walk in and say, hey, we want these 5 guys getting bigger and stronger. Let's put 30 pounds on this guy in the next 12 months and just, turn this kid into a beast. And other guys like, hey, these guys are descending down. They're going to go down a weight class. We want them to keep their strength, but, understand too, they're going to cut into their muscle a little bit with the weight cut. And so he totally gets it and understands and, writes out. We try to be consistent. Preseason, postseason, we lift. We train 4 times a week in the weight room. Some guys go 5, and then during the season, it's 3 times a week, and we don't waver. We don't pull out. We basically essentially write our schedule out for the next 12 months, and we stick to the plan. And it seems to be working. Our guys, they're getting stronger, they're getting bigger. But yeah, it's so incredibly important at our sport.
Just shifting back to recruiting for a second, Jon. Our podcast is geared towards that student athlete who's looking to make the leap to the next level and participate at whatever level of college athletics that they can. What tips could you give them about the recruiting process as far as resume and cover letters, YouTube links of videos and things of that nature? What have you found that are helpful for you?
So, I do think every coaching staff is different. For us, we get bombarded with so many emails and calls. It's really hard to kind of sift through, and it's not worth our time to answer every email because we're getting 24. We got public email addresses, and the recruiting services are the worst. We don't even open those emails, and then when we get parents and coaches emailing us, we may or may not glance at it. It's just you don't get a lot of reward from that. I've never found one of my student athletes by answering an email and writing them back and then getting them on campus. I think more importantly is you got to find someone, a contact, whether it's a high school coach that knows someone. So for us, we put about, I would say 95% of who we recruit come from people that we know, like, and trust. Other high school coaches, former teammates, and we have people in almost every state. So, and a lot has to do with our needs as well too. What weight class we're recruiting, how much scholarship dollars we have available. But my thing to the parents and the coaches and the kids would be to make sure if you feel that you've gotten some quality wins, your GPA is high, and you're looking at a couple schools and you're really, really interested, I would try to, I think there's more weight coming from a coach, maybe reaching out with a phone call or a text. Emails, for us, it's just very, and we'll end up recruiting a kid 6 months later, and then they're mad at us because they emailed us 3 times. And I'm like, listen, we get 50 to 100 emails. Like, it's very hard for us to do that, and we correct that pretty quick. So we get a lot of weird stuff because everyone's the next superstar. Wrestling is a little bit more selective, I think, than other sports, just for the fact that we have the steepest funnel. So we're the 6th most popular sport in the U.S. Okay, we're right behind soccer. Soccer's 5th. We're 6th. So we have 270,000 high school wrestlers, and there's 77 Division I programs. Wow. So just to wrestle Division I, just to get on the roster, you're talking about less than 1% chance. I think it's 0.9% chance just to be on the roster of, an average roster is 35, say. So then you got to make the team. Then you got to make the top, we have 10 starters. You got to make the top 10 on your team. Then you got to break, into the top 33, which, become equivalent to an NCAA qualifier. Then you're fighting to be an All-American, which is top 8, then fighting to be a national champion. So the funnel is so incredibly steep. And I think there's so many variables there. But yes, it starts with the recruiting process, being a state champion, just talking about competitive now, being a state champion carries very little weight for us, unless it's Pennsylvania, California. A few other states have some pretty difficult state tournaments. But out of all the states some of these states got 5-6 divisions. There's over 1,000 state champions every year. Over 1,000 out of all the weight classes and all the divisions. So being a state champion doesn't carry a ton of weight. My advice would be, listen, even if you don't have the resources, find a way to get out to these national tournaments, whether it's Super 32, Fargo Nationals, the Ironman during the year. There's about 5 or 6 tournaments that carry a tremendous amount of weight. And if you can figure out how to place in those tournaments, then there you go. You're going to get recruited. If you're not placing in the national tournaments, it's going to be, very difficult unless you know someone that knows someone. So that's kind of the hard facts. But once you place at one of those tournaments and you're in the rankings, then you're going to get like 30 letters because most college coaches are lazy and they're going to pull up the top 20 kids and that's just, I'm just calling it what it is because I did it for a number of years. And you sit there and you type one letter and then you just basically you send a letter to every top 20 kid at every weight class, and hopefully some of them bite back, and then you start the conversation. We're very one-sided. We find 10, 12 kids that we really like, and then we go after them with everything we have, and we tend to get 5 or 6 of them. But yeah, I would have someone reach out, I would ask around, hey, if a kid wanted to wrestle at Cal Poly, hey, does anyone know any of the coaches there? Do you have any buddies that wrestle with any of their teammates? It's typically in wrestling, it's 1 to 2 degrees of separation. If you ask around enough, you can find someone that knows someone, and that would be the best in my opinion. So that's a short answer.
And as far as video is concerned, John, would you say highlights are not something you want? You'd rather see entire sets of matches?
Absolutely. And that's another big misconception in the recruiting game is we get these I don't know who these kids that, they're doing all these fancy moves and scoring all these points, but I don't know who their opponent is. It could be the worst guy in the state. So, yeah, highlight videos we don't even open. So if we, so much is online now, with Flow Wrestling and YouTube that we typically, if I find a kid we're somewhat interested in or he gets on our radar, I'll open up the book and we'll type in and see if we can pull up 2 or 3 matches and watch a couple minutes to see if he, to see how savvy he is in wrestling. But if we're dialing in on a kid, I'll typically get him to send us, 3, maybe 4 matches against the toughest guys they've ever wrestled, and one of which they lost. I want to see how they lose.
Excellent.
I want to see if they keep their composure, if they're fighting back, if they put their head down. There's so many action items in between the gaps when you go out of bounds. Are they hustling back to the center? And the best guys tend to do certain things, and that's what we look for in between the gaps a lot. So without a doubt, 100%, we don't even open the highlight videos, especially the ones with the music and all the stats. Another thing is the stats, so they email us and they're like, oh, we're 150 and 12. But my next question would be, well, who, what are your quality wins? Who have you beaten? Quality wins for us is, top 20, top 25 kid. I would rather have a kid that has 50 or 60 losses that has 3 quality wins than someone that's 150-10 but has 0. Right, exactly, and even if you lose a lot, if you beat 1 or 2, you show that you have the ability to win. And then one other thing that we look into is another one of the variables is, when did they start wrestling? Like, that's important to me. I want to know, did they start wrestling in 9th grade? And then who's their coach? How good is their high school team? When you have a kid doing very, very well and the team's not doing very well, there's something to be said about that. And then on the flip side, if you have, we recruit, a lot from some of the best teams in the country. Well, if you got, 5 teammates that are ranked top 10 and they're winning state titles and you're kind of finishing 5th or 6th, you're still good. But why are you not up? You have great coaching and you have your whole life. Like, why are you not up to where your other 5 teammates are? So, room for growth. Being when they started wrestling is important to us. Are they a multi-sport athlete is important to us. So we try to look at those variables and see if it's a good fit for us.
Yeah, you make a great point. And we were discussing before we started recording, that I coach in soccer. I always emphasize to my club kids and to anybody that's listening to our podcast along the way as well, you want to see mistakes on a video. You want to see how the student athlete handles, like you said, going out of bounds, losing. So I think those are very key components when creating your videos.
100%. Yeah, you don't want to get in the habit of painting this perfect picture because it's not realistic. You want to say, hey, this is who I am. I'm getting better. And kind of show progress. Like, hey, last year I didn't even qualify. This year I'm top 5. Next year I plan on winning it. So seeing the growth, I think, is important as well too.
Just a quick question going back, because you touched upon something that sort of resonated with me. 12 years of coaching, like you said, for yourself, and you went from being high school star, in college, had some speed bumps, okay, then was able to find your niche at the end of your college career. Does that give you a different empathy for wrestler number 33 and number 34 on your team, not just number 1 on your team?
Great question. At first, no. At first, I figured it out. I was the All-American. My first couple year coaching, I was not a great coach. I was a great workout partner because I could kick everyone's tail in the room up and down every weight class, but I think there's a lot of ego in our sport, and we just, hey, if you don't have it, you don't have it. Get the heck out of the way. Know your role. And it wasn't until recently, the last few years, really, writing down your coaching philosophy. What I found has been the biggest change for me, and it took really until the last year or two, really just coming into Cal Poly this past 8 months, writing it down. When you write something down, you tend to do it. And when our coaching philosophy says we're all inclusive and we're going to coach all 34 guys, you find yourself doing that. And it's going to be guy number 33 who never starts and graduates and becomes ultra successful that's going to come back and endow our program. Typically the guys that the All-Americans, they typically go into coaching, and that's just what happens. But but that aside, we want our guys to feel wanted. And perfect example is guy number 34 in our team. So we sat down his 3 goals. So we have 1 academic goal, 1 athletic goal, and then 1 life goal. And so his academic goal is to get a 4.0 at Cal Poly. It's pretty impressive. His athletic goal this year was to win 1 match. Just win 1 match. That was it. So he's in year 4 out of 5, and he's won 0 college matches. And this is small tournaments going against junior colleges and D2, D3, NAIA. So he's won 0 matches. And then his 3rd goal, was something in his degree that he wanted to sell a certain number. He's an ag major, so he wanted to sell a certain number of plants. Well, so this kid, who's number 34 out of 34, my assistant coach comes in at 6 a.m. with him and another guy, and has been working with him for weeks and weeks. Well, he finally won his first match. And, his awesome. Parents were stoked. He was stoked. And a couple more weeks went by. He went up to Reno because we could enter in our entire roster. And he won a second match. And this one, his parents actually drove like 10 hours to watch. And I asked my student, I said, so what did your dad say? Because they drove a long way. He goes, it was worth every mile. So
that's awesome.
It's stuff like that, it makes it, it's like, man, that's like, that makes me feel just as good as the couple guys we had in the finals. Just being all inclusive, it makes you look at things differently. You talk to them differently. It's not a dog eat dog world. It's hey, no, everyone's got their role. And the better our number 34, the better all our backups and non-starters get, the better our starters get, because those are the guys that are pushing them. So, understand that the whole tide is rising. And it's just been flat out fun for us.
That's one of the best stories. We've been doing this podcast now for about 2 years, Jon. So that's one of the best stories that we've heard a coach tell us. I really think that's a great story. I love it.
Oh, it's great. You kidding? That kid and his parents will never forget that.
Absolutely.
You've answered the easy question so far, Jon. Now we're going to switch it over. I'm going to send it to Mark. This is the section of the podcast that many of the coaches have folded under this line of questioning. So this is the getting to know you section, and Mark has a little music for us that he's going to trigger right now.
Getting to know you, getting to know all about you.
That's right. Sing it, Julie.
Getting to like you, getting to hope.
Okay, enough for her. Question number 1, Jon. If we were to search your phone, what would be the top 3 played songs or artists?
The Eagles, Journey, anything 80s, but nothing hardcore. I think in wrestling we become so hard, and then you would think that we'd listen to maybe some hard rock or something, but any kind of soft rock, laid back music to relax us, that's what you're going to find in my phone.
All right, I'm gonna put in Hall & Oates as the third one. Is that okay?
Absolutely. Yes, Hall & Oates is right up there for sure.
Perfect. We're big fans. So, question 2: who is the most famous or infamous person you have in your contact list?
I'm trying to think outside of wrestling here, just because the wrestling world's so small, and everyone knows everyone. I would say my high school teammate Nate Parker. He's movie star now down in LA and director, and is doing some pretty big things.
Oh wow! And number 3, do you have a favorite quote?
I do, and it feeds right into that last story, and how we coach our guys. It's people won't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yeah.
And that's really one thing that I remind myself over and over. It doesn't matter that I was an All-American or was on good teams. It's these kids, our kids want us to know. They want to know that we care about them. So I remind myself of that every single morning.
Yeah, that's a good one. I love that quote. Question 4: can you give the listeners a little-known fact about yourself?
I had to think about this one because I'm pretty wide open and wear everything on my sleeve. But not a lot of people know.
Oh, this should be good.
That I like to read quite a bit. I try to force myself to read 30 minutes a day, and it's all self-help books, 100%. Books from the 50s and 60s all the way up to some of the new titles. So I really dig in, and it motivates me more so than anything, and just gives me different perspectives on how to become better as a person.
Sure thing. I like those.
He's one of the first coaches we've had on that actually likes to read.
Yeah, we had a. What was the question?
What was your favorite?
What are you reading?
Books?
Yeah, what are you currently reading? And we had to get rid of it because we very rarely got a good answer or an answer.
Well, the one I'm just finishing right now is Bill Walsh's book. It's called The Score Takes Care of Itself. Oh, yeah. A bunch of short stories, and I love the 49ers back in the day with all those big guys. So it's pretty darn good read. Oh,
great. Next question: who has been the biggest influence in your life?
Definitely my parents and my coaches. They've given me opportunity and to do what I love. I think there's 2 types of people in this world. There's the people that do what they love, and there's the people that do what they have to do in order to do what they love. So I've been very fortunate to stay in this industry and really do well from just having great people around me.
Sure, makes a big difference. Next, if you could have dinner with anybody, dead or alive, who would you choose?
I would choose my father. I lost him a few years ago, and it would be pretty awesome.
Wow. If you weren't coaching at this point in time, what do you think you might be doing?
That's a tough one. I believe I was put on this earth to coach wrestling. There's not a doubt in my mind. The wrestling part comes easy to me. The leadership I'm trying to learn every day more about. But I guess if I had to do something different, I'd be maybe going to entrepreneurship or be a small business owner. I love the idea of growing something.
Sure thing. All right, we snuck this question. This is the first time we've had this question on here, so I'm not sure how it's going to go, but here we have it. What is one thing you believe that others might think is crazy?
I actually had to ask my wife this last night.
Great.
Yeah. I'm like, what do you think? And, what she said, and I kind of agree, is I'm a little bit optimistic. I think I tend to think we can accomplish things that other people don't think we can. So some may think I'm delusional, but, I know that if it's been done, I'm going to figure out, I'm going to find who did it, and I'm going to call them and ask them how they did it, and we're going to try to mirror that. So just maybe being over-optimistic.
Right, got it. Lastly, do you have any web-based sites or tools that you rely on or enjoy using, either for work or personal use?
Yeah, we're pretty savvy. I do have audiobooks when I'm driving, especially on the road with recruiting, and sometimes I make the team listen to them. But the one thing I use more than anything is just the Notes app on the iPhone, because it'll go straight to my computers, it'll go straight to my iPad, and I have 600 or 700 notes on there right now. When I'm reading a book, I find something good, I'll type it in there, 1 or 2 paragraphs, and then continue reading.
Right.
I'll wake up in the middle of the night, 3, 4 a.m. with like an idea. Instead of having a pen and paper by my bed, I just grab my phone and type it in before I forget and go back to sleep. So, and then about once a month, I'll go back through all of them and I'll pull out, some of the things I had forgotten about and try to implement.
Sure. I use that Evernote product for that. I like a lot as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Wow.
Excellent. Made it through, flying colors.
I'll tell you what, Jon, you've handled this one pretty easily. As our coaches have gone on this podcast, you should be pretty proud. I'm sure there's no towel, no sweating going on in the hot seat or anything from you.
Oh, I appreciate it.
Back on topic, my final question will be for you today, Jon. We talked about student athletes and advice we could give them. What advice could we give the parent about the recruiting process and, let's say, their role in the recruiting process?
I would say 2 things. Number one, don't put, because I have a little guy now and I'm already going through this and he's 5, but don't push him in a certain direction and try to live through him. It's so incredibly hard when you've spent so much time and effort and resources, and to get your son or daughter to a certain point to be recruited. And the second thing is, just being very, very businesslike. They got to understand, we're in the business of winning wrestling matches. That's what we do. This is a business. I think the hardest conversations I've had with parents is trying to say, yes, we want your son to wrestle for us. However, we cannot give him a big scholarship. And here's the reasons why. Because again, I think ego gets involved and it's very hard for them to understand. And we've lost some kids because of it. It's dealing with partial scholarships and dealing with money. It's now a business. So, we try to be as clear and upfront as we can with the parents and where we stand. And those are some difficult conversations. So not being too pushy, letting your son or daughter, make decisions, give them the information, have them write their little T charts and, let them make the decision. Because the worst thing that can happen is you get pushed on a school you really don't want to go to. And the kid's always going to know deep down that, I really, really didn't want to come here. I wish I would have taken that other visit. They're not going to be bought in. So if someone commits to us and I could tell they're not sure, I'll say, listen, go take that trip. Because when you come here, daggone it, I want it to be it. We're going to shut that chapter and you're all in 100%. This is where you want to be. And there's no second thoughts. Because when you hit some of that adversity, which that they all do, they're going to start questioning themselves. And I kind of went through it personally when I went to Missouri. I got pushed pretty hard by my coaches and my parents to go to the Big 12 school. That's, the bright lights and the facilities and the great coaches and everything. And it took me a little while to settle in because I wasn't 100% sure. I'm glad I went there. It certainly changed my life, but that would be the biggest thing. Don't push them and keep the conversations very businesslike.
And I'm sure in speaking of those conversations, Jon, you prefer to speak with the student athlete. I think we've spoken with other coaches and in my own experiences as well. Even if the kid is a shy kid, this helps in their development as a person. And you mentioned earlier in the podcast today, the parents aren't the agent for the kid. And I would guess you would prefer to speak with the student athlete himself.
Absolutely. I think that's one of our red flags that we look for, that, if the parents are in the room and the mom or dad is consistently speaking for the prospect, on their behalf, and I'll ask the kid a question and the parents are speaking, we'll try to split them up. So, and I learned this from another great coach, but we'll actually split them up. So I'll have my assistants take mom or dad and show them something, and I'll take the kid. Or if we're out eating, I'll say, hey, the prospect's riding with me. Parents, you're riding with the other coach. So we'll split them up, and then we'll try to dig in a little deeper. And it is hard with the shy ones. I mean, I was shy at that age, and sometimes it can be overwhelming. But you try to find the the 1 or 2 touch points and figure out what the prospect cares about the most, and then let them know what we have to offer in that area. And then if it's a fit, it's a fit. I think the second part of that is when it is a fit for the kid, and they're struggling to pull the trigger because of mom or dad. That's when I step in and say, listen, if you want to come here, then daggone it, you better, we need you to commit now, because we got 2 more kids at your weight coming in next week. And if, we're not in a situation to be picky and choosy, we got to go with first available. So we'll put some pressure on them, but I think it's positive pressure. It's not, hey, if you don't commit tomorrow, we're pulling your scholarship. It's like, no, we want you, you're a number 1 guy. However, we got some more kids coming in. And, if this is the place for you, then, just let your yes be yes. And I tell you what, there's been so many times where, we gotten yeses on the spot because of that conversation. And it's been great. It works well for both parties.
I'm going to steal that tactic from you, John, because I think it's outstanding about separating the parents. So I will absolutely make sure that I footnote it and let him know that it came from you. But it's what a great idea. I never thought of it. And whoever was the coach that told you about it, it's an outstanding recruiting move for coaches.
Yeah, as you said that, we both looked at each other and we're like,
great move.
That's a great little piece of advice there. Well done.
Thank you.
John, as we wrap up here, are there any final thoughts or parting words for our listeners that you'd like to say?
I'll just leave it with this. The greatest testament to myself and my coaching staff and our program and everyone involved in our program, it's not going to come down to winning or losing. What I want is my vision for this program is in an arena, where there's a lot of wrestling going on. I want people to look over and see Cal Poly if we're wrestling a dual meet, and all of our teams standing up, coaching their teammate, and high school does a great job of this. College, everyone is selfish and worries about themselves, but just standing up, yelling, getting into the match. And I want every kid to look at Cal Poly and say, man, I want to wrestle for that program. I want kids from other colleges to say, daggone it, I wish I would have went there. And I want parents to notice it too. So I think just, everyone talks about a family atmosphere, but, you can't talk about it. You have to develop it and cultivate it just like anything else. And, there's a good chance we're probably not going to win a national title as a team. But, one thing that we can win at the highest level is just involvement with our guys and just having that family atmosphere. And, and it makes life so much more fun, man. I don't have a job. I get to go in and hang out with great kids and great coaches and great administration and, have fun and see how far we can push the dial. So that's it from us here at Cal Poly, but we're fired up to see where we can take this program.
Sure thing. Sounds great. John, anything that's going on your end that you wish to promote with us today?
No, Cal Poly Wrestle is our Twitter handle, for any wrestling fans that want to follow our progress. But yeah, we're just rocking and rolling over here and trying to recruit the best kids we can and develop them and graduate them and
go buy some tickets.
Exactly.
I have to ask you, has anyone ever sent in a video with Vision Quest music on it from Madonna? Has that ever happened?
I don't know if that's happened, probably because I don't even put the video in. I don't even think I have a DVD player at work or at home. So
I got to say, I'm not a wrestling coach, but if a kid ever sent that to me, I would want to see him.
Yeah, we get some pretty crazy stuff. Yeah, that's funny.
I could only imagine. Well, John, we appreciate you coming in. Once again, we've been speaking with Jon Sioredas, head coach of Cal Poly Wrestling. Once again, an absolute pleasure speaking with you.
Yeah, awesome, John.
Nothing but the best. Continued success. And again, thank you.
Absolutely. My pleasure. I appreciate you guys.
And before we head off, just remember, folks, our contact information on the web is tacklingcollegesports.com. Yes, that has been changed. Make sure you sign up with your first name and email if you want to be included in the Friday 5. All the cool kids are doing it. It's a weekly email of 5 items we are interested in or pondering. Email, if you want to get Chris, it's Chris at TCS Nation. For me, it's Mark at TCS Nation. Facebook.com /Tackling College Sports. Twitter has also changed at Tackling College. Instagram, Tackling College. And until next time, be your best.
Be your best.
Your college sports future awaits. So join the TCS Nation and be your best.